The plea for peace. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was silent, filled with fear. Dozens of alien species sat around a circular table, their faces pale, their bodies tense. Normally, these halls were filled with debates, arguments, and power struggles. But now, they all had the same enemy. A massive hologram flickered in the center of the chamber, displaying a map of the galaxy. Red zones covered more than half of it. Each red mark represented a planet that had fallen, a fleet that had been destroyed, a stronghold that had been wiped out. A nervous voice broke the silence. How much longer until they reached the core worlds? All heads turned toward High Chancellor Vornak, leader of the council. His once proud silver fur was now dull, his golden eyes filled with exhaustion. He looked at the council's military strategist, General Silov. Silov hesitated before answering. At their current speed, he swallowed hard. Less than 3 cycles. A murmur of panic spread across the chamber. Impossible, one counselor hissed. We were the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. We ruled for thousands of years. How can mere humans do this? No one had an answer. Because the truth was terrifying. Humanity had started as a minor species, trapped on the edges of the galaxy. The council had kept them contained, limiting their growth, controlling their expansion. But something changed. The humans discovered their restrictions. They fought back. At first, the council laughed. They sent fleets to crush the rebellion. But the humans didn't break. They adapted. They evolved. They learned faster than any species had ever seen. And then the real war began. Now, entire empires had fallen. Fleets vanished overnight. The Dominion, the Valkyrie, the Grest, species that had once ruled entire sectors, were now extinct. And the worst part, the humans were smiling while they did it. Vornak took a deep breath. There is one option left, he said, voice firm. We must surrender. Silence. Then an uproar. Never. One shouted, they will exterminate us. Another argued, we must fight. A general slammed his fist on the table. Vornak roared, his voice echoing across the chamber. We have no choice. The room fell silent again. We have tried everything, Vornak said, his tone quieter now, but no less firm. They have countered every strategy, survived every battle. We cannot defeat them. The council members looked at each other, the weight of the truth pressing down on them. Finally, someone whispered, then who will negotiate? Vornak exhaled. I will. Vornak stood inside the cold steel halls of the UH Titan, the largest and most feared warship in the human fleet, the heartbeat of humanity's war machine. Everywhere he looked, humans moved with precision, efficient, disciplined, focused. Their eyes were sharp, their armor battle-worn. These weren't the soft diplomats the council had once underestimated. These were warriors. A pair of human soldiers led him down a long corridor. At the end stood a door. Beyond that door sat the man who controlled the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, Admiral Dante Graves. The door slid open. Vornak stepped inside. The room was simple. No grand throne, no unnecessary decoration. Just a table, a few chairs, and a large screen showing the latest battlefield reports. Behind the table sat Admiral Graves. He was not what Vornak expected. No shining medals, no lavish uniform, just a man in black combat gear, with cold blue eyes and the kind of face that had seen too many battles. But what unsettled Vornak the most? The slight smile on his lips. Vornak took a deep breath. Admiral Graves, I come on behalf of the Galactic Council. Graves leaned back, nodding. I know. A tense pause. Vornak forced himself to speak. We surrender. Graves raised an eyebrow. Do you? Vornak straightened. Yes. The war is over. You have won. We ask for mercy. Graves tapped his fingers on the table. Mercy. He seemed to test the word. like it was foreign to him. Vornak swallowed. We will give you whatever you want. Planets, resources, technology. Just stop the war. Graves leaned forward, placing his elbows on the table. Then he asked a question. Tell me, Chancellor, what was your species doing before this war? Vornak hesitated. Graves tilted his head. Go on. Say it. Vornak's throat went dry. He knew the answer, and he knew Graves knew it too. Before this war, the Galactic Council had been holding humanity back. They had limited their expansion, crippled their fleets, kept them weak, because they had been afraid. And now the roles were reversed. Vornak forced himself to answer. We tried to control you. Graves smiled. But this time, it was not a friendly smile. It's funny, Graves said. You say you surrender. But tell me. He leaned even closer, his voice dropping lower. Why would we stop now? Vornak's blood ran cold. The realization hit him like a thunderstrike. The humans weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting because they wanted to. And worse, they were enjoying it. The council chambers were silent as Vornak's transmission played. His face was pale, his hands trembling. His voice shook. The humans, they're not stopping. A terrified council member leaned forward. But we surrendered. Vornak just shook his head. They don't care. The message crackled. The last thing the council saw before the screen went black was the image of Admiral Graves, smiling. And then, a final chilling sentence. We haven't even started yet. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Dozens of alien leaders argued, their voices overlapping in panic. Some demanded immediate action. Others whispered in fear. But all of them had the same question. Why hadn't humanity stopped? The surrender was official. High Chancellor Vornak himself had delivered the message to the humans. They should have accepted the Council's plea for peace. Instead, the reports coming in were worse than ever. More planets lost, more fleets destroyed, more empires collapsing. A trembling voice cut through the noise. They rejected our surrender. Silence. Vornak sat at the head of the chamber, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. His fur was damp with sweat, his golden eyes unfocused. He had seen Admiral Graves' face. That smile, that cold, amused expression. They don't see this as a war anymore, Vornak said, his voice hollow. This is something else. General Tselov, one of the last remaining military leaders, stood up. His armor was battle-worn, his scales dull from stress. Then we must strike first. Every fleet, every soldier, every weapon we have left, throw it at them now. It's the only way. Vornak didn't respond. He knew the truth. There was no striking first anymore. Humanity was already too far ahead. They had shattered the strongest fleets in the galaxy, crushed the greatest armies. And worst of all, they had adapted to every tactic thrown at them. Another voice spoke. We still have weapons that could turn the tide. The ancient ones. The ones we swore never to use. Murmurs spread through the chamber. There were weapons buried deep in the Council's archives. Forbidden technologies designed for total destruction. But they came at a cost. A counselor shook his head. If we use them, we risk destroying the very galaxy we wish to protect. Vornak's gaze remained distant. Then perhaps that is the only way to stop them. Far away in the depths of space, the last great fleets of the Council gathered. Massive warships assembled, forming lines that stretched across the void. The largest armada in history, prepared for one final desperate battle. The human fleets were already on the move. A single message was sent from the Council's flagship to every remaining soldier, every remaining world. Hold the line. Humanity must not pass. On the bridge of the HFY Titan, Admiral Graves received the message. He read it once, then set the datapad aside. He turned to his officers, his voice calm. They think they can stop us. A chuckle spread across the command deck. Graves smiled. Good. We needed the warm-up. The fleet moved forward, and the final battle began. The battle had begun. Across the void of space, the last great fleets of the Galactic Council formed a defensive line. Thousands of warships stood ready, their weapons locked onto the incoming human armada. This was their last stand. On the bridge of the UH Titan, Admiral Graves watched the enemy formations with calm interest. His officers worked in silence, running calculations, predicting movements, analyzing weaknesses. Status? Graves asked. A tactical officer responded. They've concentrated their forces around their largest dreadnoughts. Heavy shielding, overlapping defenses. They're trying to funnel us into a kill zone. Graves nodded, as if amused. Smart. He leaned forward slightly, but not smart enough. The human fleet continued its approach, slowing as if preparing for negotiations. The council ships held their position, waiting, hoping, until suddenly, without warning, the humans vanished. A ripple in space, a flicker of energy, and then nothing. On the council's flagship, panic erupted. Where did they go? An officer shouted. General Xyloth stared at the empty void where the human fleet had been. Impossible, he whispered. They couldn't have just disappeared. A second later, alarms blared. The humans had not vanished. They had moved. Faster than anything the council had ever seen, the human fleet had repositioned itself directly behind their defenses. Before the council commanders could react, hell was unleashed. Human railguns, plasma cannons, and missile barrages tore through the unprotected sides of the council fleet. Shields flickered and failed. Explosions bloomed like dying stars. This isn't possible, a council officer screamed. They were right in front of us. Graves watched from his bridge, his expression unreadable. They adapted to our tactics. We adapted to their expectations. It wasn't just superior firepower that gave humanity the advantage. It was their ability to think differently. While the council followed traditions and rigid strategies, humans fought with creativity, unpredictability, and absolute ruthlessness. The council's formation collapsed in minutes. Battleships drifted in flames, dreadnoughts split apart. The great last stand was crumbling before it had even begun. On the flagship, General Xyloth gritted his teeth. We have no choice, he growled. Activate the Doomsday Protocol. Across the battlefield, a signal was sent. Deep in the council's hidden bases, ancient weapons powered up. Technology so destructive it had been locked away for millennia. One chance, one final move to stop humanity. On the Titan, Admiral Graves received the intelligence report. He read it carefully, then simply smirked. They're finally getting serious, he mused. Then he turned to his officers. Prepare for Phase 2. The battlefield was a graveyard of shattered warships. What had once been the might of the Galactic Council was now a burning ruin. Thousands of vessels had been reduced to wreckage, their twisted remains drifting through the void. Yet, despite their overwhelming defeat, the Council wasn't finished. Deep beneath the surface of an uncharted planet, hidden away for centuries, the last hope of the Council awakened. The Doomsday Protocol. A colossal machine, ancient and forbidden, powered up. Its core, a swirling mass of unstable energy, roared to life. The weapon had no name, only a purpose: to erase entire civilizations. In the council chambers, the remaining leaders watched in grim silence as the weapon systems came online. Once we activate it, a scientist warned, we cannot undo it. The energy will spread across the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. High Chancellor Vornak closed his eyes. He had never wanted this, but humanity had given them no choice. Do it, he ordered. The final command was sent. Across the battlefield, the moment the signal was detected, alarms blared on every human warship. A priority alert flashed on the UH Titan's command screen. Admiral Graves read the incoming report. Then, for the first time since the war began, his smile faded. He turned to his officers. They've done it. They've activated something big. A technician's voice was shaky. Admiral, the energy buildup is off the charts. If they fire this thing, it won't just destroy us. It could destabilize entire star systems. For the first time, the enemy wasn't just fighting to win. They were willing to burn the entire galaxy down if it meant stopping humanity. Graves exhaled slowly. So that's how far they'll go. The screen displayed a countdown. 5 minutes until the weapon fired. Options? Graves asked, his voice calm. A strategist spoke quickly. The weapon's power core is protected by an energy field. No conventional weapons can break through it in time. Graves studied the data. Then we go unconventional. A hush fell over the command deck. The Admiral stood, his icy blue eyes locked on the planet's surface. Prepare the Nightfall strike team. We're going in. Across the fleet, a single command was issued. Humanity's deadliest warriors were being deployed. Time was running out. And the only thing standing between total annihilation and survival was the unstoppable force of human soldiers. The drop pods roared through the atmosphere, streaking toward the surface like falling meteors. Inside each pod, human warriors sat in silence, gripping their weapons, faces unreadable behind their helmets. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were Nightfall, humanity's most elite strike force. Each soldier had survived wars that would have broken entire armies. Each one had faced impossible odds, and won. Their mission was clear: get to the Doomsday Weapons core and shut it down, no matter the cost. Inside his pod, Commander Eric Voss checked his gear. His armor was reinforced with adaptive shielding, capable of withstanding direct plasma strikes. His rifle, a prototype Gauss weapon, was built for one thing: destruction. A voice crackled in his helmet. ETA 60 seconds. Voss took a slow breath. Outside his pod's small window, the surface of the planet loomed closer. A fortress of steel and energy, surrounded by massive anti-air turrets and hundreds of enemy soldiers. A full frontal assault would be suicide. But they weren't here for an assault. They were here for a surgical kill. The countdown in his visor hit 0. The drop pod slammed into the ground, sending up a cloud of dust and fire. Voss's restraints snapped open, and he moved instantly. No hesitation, no fear. All around him, other pods hit the ground. Soldiers burst out, weapons ready. The battle began. Nightfall didn't need orders. They already knew the plan. Voss and his squad moved fast, cutting through enemy defenses like ghosts. Their weapons silenced targets before alarms could even be triggered. Guards fell. Patrols were wiped out before they even knew they were under attack. The fortress's defensive grid failed within minutes. But the enemy was still prepared. The deeper they pushed, the heavier the resistance became. The aliens had war machines, bipedal walkers armed with plasma cannons, automated turrets, combat drones. Nightfall adapted. They hacked enemy systems, turned their own defenses against them. Explosions rocked the facility as human firepower tore through once impenetrable walls. Status, Voss asked as he ducked behind cover, reloading his rifle. A soldier's voice crackled in. Almost there, but they've reinforced the core chamber. Heavy resistance. Voss glanced at the mission timer. Less than 2 minutes until the weapon fired. There was no time for caution. He gave the only order that made sense. Push through. Nightfall charged. Grenades detonated in the halls, clearing a path. Mechs fell, their pilots ripped apart by precision shots. The air was filled with plasma fire, but the humans moved too fast, fought too hard. Finally, they'd reached the core chamber. And standing in their way was the last line of defense. A squad of enhanced alien warriors, each one a genetically modified super soldier, designed specifically to counter humans. Voss clenched his jaw. We don't have time for this. The alien leader grinned, stepping forward. You won't make it past us. Voss raised his rifle. Try and stop us. The final fight had begun. The air inside the core chamber burned with raw energy. The doomsday weapon's heart, a swirling vortex of unstable power, pulsated, its countdown ticking toward total galactic annihilation. 90 seconds left. Between the human strike team and their objective stood the Council's final warriors, genetically enhanced super soldiers, engineered for one purpose: to kill humans. Their leader, a towering creature clad in shimmering battle armor, raised his blade, a weapon crackling with enough energy to slice through a warship's hull. His 4 glowing eyes locked onto Commander Voss. "You should have surrendered when you had the chance." Voss smirked. "We don't do surrender." Then the battle erupted. The alien warriors moved like lightning, their reflexes beyond anything natural. They dodged bullets with inhuman speed, their strikes fast and devastating. One of them lunged at a human soldier, its blade slicing the air. But the human sidestepped in an instant, planting a shotgun against its armor. Boom! The alien's chest exploded. Another enemy charge, claws glowing with plasma. A Nightfall operative flipped over the attack, landing behind the creature and plunging a combat knife straight into its skull. Voss fought at the center, trading blows with the enemy leader. The alien's strength was monstrous, every strike forcing him back. His armored shields flickered under the assault. 60 seconds left. The vortex at the weapon's core raged, growing unstable. If it fired, it wouldn't just destroy the human fleet. It would consume entire star systems. Voss ducked, spun, and fired. His shots barely grazed his opponent. The alien grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "You lose," the creature growled. Voss grinned. "Not today." A det charge beeped on the alien's chest. Before it could react, boom! The explosion ripped the enemy apart, sending Voss crashing to the ground. He rolled, coughing, armor cracked but intact. 30 seconds left. "Status," he barked. His second-in-command, Reyes, shouted back. "Cleared the hostiles." Moving to the core, they sprinted toward the weapon's control panel. Sparks flew as they hacked into the system, trying to shut it down. But the system was locked. A message flashed on the screen. "Failsafe engage. Remote shutdown impossible." Voss clenched his jaw. The only way to stop it now was manual overload. He turned to his team. "Get to extraction." Raids froze. "Wait, what?" "That overload will vaporize everything in a 10-kilometer radius." "Exactly," Voss said. They stared at him. Then Reyes gave a slow nod. "No arguments. No hesitation. See you on the other side, Commander." The team rushed for the exit, leaving Voss alone. He placed his hands on the control console, breathing deep. 10 seconds left. A single command. Override engaged. The core screamed. Energy lashed out like a storm, the vortex collapsing on itself. Outside, the remaining human forces received the signal. Target neutralized. Fall back. Now. The Nightfall team barely made it out before the fortress erupted in a blinding explosion. A shockwave ripped through the sky, sending debris flying for miles. On the UH Titan, Admiral Graves watched the readings. The doomsday weapon's signature blinked out. Silence filled the bridge. One of his officers hesitated. "Sir, Voss's signal is gone." Graves exhaled. Slowly, he nodded. Then he did his job. The war wasn't over yet, but humanity had just crushed the Council's last hope. And now, with nothing left to stop them, the final march to victory had begun. The battlefield was silent. The doomsday weapon was gone, reduced to a crater of molten metal and shattered stone. The fortress, once the Council's last hope, was nothing but smoldering ruins. On board the UH Titan, Admiral Graves stood at the command deck, watching the readings. The massive energy spike had faded. The war-ending weapon had been neutralized. "Status?" he asked. An officer hesitated. "Our fleet is intact. The enemy forces are in full retreat. A pause. Then, quieter. Still no sign of Commander Voss. The bridge fell silent. Graves closed his eyes for a moment. He had known Voss for years. The man had been one of the best. No, the best. And now he was gone. But there was no time for grief. The war wasn't over. Graves turned to the tactical display. The remaining forces of the Galactic Council were scattered and leaderless. Their strongest fleets were in ruins, their armies shattered. The war that had once threatened humanity's existence was now a one-sided slaughter. And now, it was time to end it. "Prepare the fleet," Graves ordered. His voice was cold. "Final. We're taking the Council's homeworld." Across the galaxy, the last remnants of the Council gathered on Velnar Prime, their capital planet. The once mighty rulers of the stars huddled in fear, staring at the sky. They knew what was coming. The human fleet arrived like an unstoppable storm. Thousands of warships descended upon the planet, their weapons locked and ready. The Council's remaining forces scrambled to respond, but there was no defense strong enough. A transmission was sent. High Chancellor Vornak, his once proud figure now trembling with exhaustion, appeared on the Titan's main screen. His voice was weak. "Please," he begged. "No more. We surrender." Graves leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Surrender." Vornak swallowed hard. "Yes. The war is over. We cannot fight anymore." For a long moment, Graves said nothing. Then he chuckled. It wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was a laugh of disbelief. "You want peace now," he said, shaking his head. "After everything." Vornak flinched. "We had no choice. We feared what humanity would become." Graves' smirk faded. "You feared us. So you started this war. Tried to wipe us out." His voice dropped. "Now you fear us for a different reason." Vornak hesitated. "Yes." Graves exhaled slowly. Then he gave the only response that made sense. "Too late." The signal cut. On the surface of Velnar Prime, the Council leaders stared at the sky in horror. The human fleet opened fire. Planetary defenses collapsed in seconds. The sky turned red with fire. Cities burned. Entire strongholds vanished in massive explosions. Humanity's final message to the galaxy was clear. This wasn't just victory. This was punishment. Days later, the war was officially over. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Its leaders were gone. Its empire was dust. And humanity. Humanity stood alone. No species would dare challenge them again. No empire would ever rise to oppose them. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would never be forgotten. And deep in the wreckage of the battlefield, a lone signal pulsed. Buried beneath the rubble of the Doomsday Fortress, something stirred. A cracked helmet. A weak heartbeat. Commander Voss's eyes flickered open. And he smiled. Because he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had won.